Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the Curt Universal 4-pole trailer wiring harness on a 2023 Kia Telluride. Now, adding 4-pole trailer wiring to any vehicle that you plan on towing, or even if you have some accessories that may light up with your light functions, this is going to be required. And this is going to give you not only your running lights, your turn signals, but also your brake lights. So that's going to keep you safe and legal by letting the people behind you know what you're intending to do. Now, as far as peace of mind too, this is going to be module protected as well as has an inline fuse. So if you ever have any backfeed from your trailer, it's not going to cause any harm to your factory electronics. So as far as the installation, let's take a look at it. We'll go step by step, and that way you can get your 4-pole installed on your Telluride. To begin our installation, we are going to need to remove both of the taillights, and that's going to be accomplished. There's this plastic panel here. We do need to pop that off to get to our hardware. And on this edge here, right at the tail light, you're going to see there's a little slot that allows you to get small flathead in there. So that's kind of where the clips live. Best thing is just kind of pry back and you'll get one of those there. And then as you work your way down, you can kind of just press it in. If you need to, you can kind of just give it a little nudge here with the screwdriver. But this panel should come out fairly easily. Just take your time here. And then we could set that aside, and that's going to give us access to our 3 10mm bolts that we're going to take out. And you can also use a Phillips head screwdriver to get these out. Now, throughout this process, you're going to want to make sure you hold on to all your hardware. That way, reinstallation's a lot easier, so keep it in a nice organized spot. Now, to get the taillight to pop out, a lot of times you can kind of just wiggle it back and forth. There's going to be some tabs that go into rubber, and so sometimes those kind of hold into there. So if you need to, you can use a plastic trim tool to just pry straight out, and that should help loosen it. There's going to be a few of them. We got 2 of them there, so those kind of where your pry points are, just lightly pull on that. And that's going to give us access to our wires, which we are going to tie into to get our 4-pole to work. So for now, I'm going to just go ahead and push on the tab here. That way we can separate our taillight, making it a little bit easier to work with. You can peel back some of this electrical tape, and then there's going to be this sheathing here, which I'm going to be using. I just have some small cutters here. Just take your time. You don't obviously want to cut the wires, so just work your way here. Now, because this is a universal kit, this is going to need to be extended, and I think that's going to be the best way to do this. So you are going to need to pick up a little bit of extra wire and maybe some butt connectors that are heat shrink, and that way you can extend these wires up. So these are going to be going on our driver's side. This is going to give us our running light and our turn signal. So I'm going to be using some corresponding colored wires just to make sure that they match up. But if not, just make sure you're keeping track of which ones are which, and that way you can make your connections. Now, with this kit, Kia has changed the wiring here, so there is no direct plug and play at this point. So this is going to be the best way to do it. And if you've never used quick splices before, they're pretty easy to use, so don't let that scare you off. But what I'm going to do is grab my extra wire that I have, and I'm going to pass that down as our module is going to kind of live underneath the rear fascia. We're going to be tying into 2 of these wires. The green, I've gone ahead and tested that. That's going to be for our running lights. So our brown normally corresponds with that. So I'm going to use my quick splice to connect that now. And I'm going to go a little bit further back. That way we're not right against the plug here. And the way these work, you're going to just feed the wires in through these. Now, one side does look like it's capped. So I normally just put your new wire there. And your other one, you're going to just kind of slip into here. The main thing that you're looking for is that it stays in this position. That way when this metal clip goes down, it bites into it well. So I'm going to slide this up real quick and make sure everything's good there. And at this point, you can take a set of pliers and just crimp that down. And that metal is going to bite into those wires. And that way you can still get that electrical function, and it's going to tie into it. So with that, make sure that metal clip is all the way flush so it has a good bite, and then from there we'll just clip this over, and that's one down. Now our yellow is going to be our stoplight as well as our turn signal on the left, so we're going to take our yellow wire and it's going to go with the yellow wire, so pretty easy there. So now I'm going to take my new wires and pass them down through this gap, and that way they get to the bottom so we can make our attachment to our harness. Now, sometimes this can be tricky with these two. You can tape them together to make it a little bit easier. What I do is kind of a fish wire technique, as we call it, and I'm using an airline tube to just pass this down. You can kind of use whatever you have, but this makes it easy to pass it all the way down. I'll just take the ends of my wires here, tape it up to my pull wire, and we can now pull these through. So I've gone ahead and kind of just taped these up. Now I can go ahead, plug our taillight back in, and then slide this back. To get our module mounted up and the rest of our connections made, we're going to take this panel down, and there's just going to be push pins along here, and to get those off you just pry on the center. That center part comes out. You should be able to get the whole one out. Once you have all three taken out, there are some plastic nuts up here. You can kind of just reach up there and spin them with your hand generally. You can also put a socket on them, or honestly you can just kind of pull on them lightly and they should come off fairly easily. But go ahead, get this panel taken down, and again, that's just going to give us a lot more room here to work. Now we're going to get the module mounted up, and then we can make all our connections. It does come with a double-sided foam tape, and you can stick it on any of these flat surfaces here. Just make sure they're cleaned off a little bit so it can stick to it. Other options, you can use a self-tapper to mount this up. There's some studs, you can put a nut on there. I'm just going to go ahead and zip tie this up to our factory wire loom that we have here, as it does live behind that panel, so this is going to be a nice spot for it. It's going to stay protected, and it's going to hold up to this. So we'll go ahead and get this zip tied on. And I'm going to throw one more around our wires back here. So now we'll start making our connections. We'll start here with the brown and yellow that's coming off the module. And here we have our wires pulled down. And we're just going to cut these, just kind of get some of the excess that we have here. And then I'm going to strip back these ends. Now, it does come with butt connectors in the kit. And it is protected behind that panel once it's back. But I tend to use heat shrink butt connectors. We have those available here at eTrailer. They're really nice because once you crimp them down, you can heat them up and they're going to seal up, making a watertight connection. So just a little added protection. It's up to you. We'll turn our attention to our red and white wire. And our white is going to be a ground. It already has a ring terminal attached. And the red, because we're only using the two wires up there and this is a universal kit, we're actually going to make this a ground as well. So a few different options here. There is a self-tapping screw that you could tie this in. And because we're tying this into the ground, you could use the quick splice included in the kit. I'm going to be using a ring terminal here and just kind of tie them into one. Now, don't use the larger ring terminal that's included in the kit because you'll need that to tie onto your positive battery post. So what I'll do here, I'm just going to cut this extra, strip this back. And as far as grounding goes, there are a few studs here. Again, you could probably grab some extra nuts for hardware to tighten that down, and that would work fine. But a self-tapper into pretty much any of this raw metal under here, as long as you're not hitting wires, that's going to ground it properly. And this kind of open area here, this is going to have quite a bit of metal built up, so it can get a little bit tricky to drill through that. You can use a pilot hole. Really, you can use any of this bottom portion. Just be careful. You want to check up top to make sure that you're not going to run into anything there. I think right here is going to work well for me. So I'll go ahead and get this self-tapper run through. Now that we have that grounded, we're going to go ahead and route our green wire as well as our 4-pole over. Now the green wire, we're going to be using that same fish wire technique to get that wire up. And your 4-pole, figure out exactly where you want it on your hitch and just kind of zip tie it up to that. And we're going to be using our dust cap to attach it to our safety chain loop. You can also pick up 4-pole brackets that we have available here that give you a nice solid mounting point. It's kind of up to you. So I'll get this routed over and show you how it looks. Gone ahead and pulled up our green wire, and that's going to tie in with our quick splice to the gray and black, and that's going to give us our stop and turn signal on our passenger side. So I'll tape this up and then we'll head back underneath and I'll show you the path that I took. Now we'll backtrack here. We have our green wire and I'll show you how we got it back to the module. I went kind of over the bumper support here and then ended up using the hitch just with a series of zip ties. I went ahead and zip tied that up as well as our 4-pole and just kind of ran over here. Same thing, I fed it up and over and made our way back here. So now that we have everything pretty much in place, all we have left is our power wire. And so we're going to grab that black spool of wire that comes in the kit, and I'm going to use a heat shrink butt connector to attach this, and then we can start running it to the battery. Now's a good time if you want to clean up all your wires, just kind of bundle those, any excess slack, and get those zip tied up nice and clean. And now we can trace our power wire. So I followed some of the factory wire loom here, and I try to route things over any spots that might just hold this up and support it. And I just kind of went over the fuel tank and made my way to our underbody panel. Now at this point I went on this side just because I have a lift and we have the 10 millimeters as well as some plastic screws like we saw on that access panel back there. Now you can do this on the outside of your vehicle too on this section. The main thing is pull those out and then you run the wire in between it, and once you put this back it's going to hold it in place. It's a nice protected place to run your wires, so you get a nice run of that. And you're going to make your way up to the tunnel here. Now we do need to pass another fish wire through by our battery, which is going to be on the driver's side, and it's pretty open here, which is nice. Again, just kind of keep it to where it's not going to get caught in drive shaft, any suspension, or any of the steering. So from here, I just tape this up, and I'm going to pull that slack up, and then we can start making connections in the engine bay. I'll pull up my extra wire here. Now we obviously have some extra here, and we're also going to be putting our fuse holder in place. So you can run this a bunch of different ways. Just try to find a nice clean fashion that's not going to be just kind of all around the engine bay. So I'll cut our fuse holder here, and this is going to kind of help determine where I need to cut my wire. I'm going to put a ring terminal on one side, and this is the one supplied in the kit. And we'll crimp this down. Now, real important, make sure you don't have the fuse in here yet until we're completely all hooked up. We don't want power going through this. And we'll just pop this cap off here. And that's going to give us access to one of the spots. Honestly, any of these work. I try to stray away from these ones as they tighten on the terminal. So either one of these are going to be a good option to be able to mount up our ring terminal. And it should be a 10 millimeter. I'm going to just route my fuse holder over here. And then we can tighten this back down. Now, there is going to be a small notch here. I don't know if we can quite get our cap to go back on. If you need to, you can put a small little notch. That way it still closes down. It's kind of up to you. Now I can route my power wire how I want to be able to connect to our fuse holder. So I'm going to kind of wrap it around our fuse panel here just to kind of keep it nice and tidy. And that's going to connect over to our fuse holder so I can cut off the excess here. And then we'll start stripping these back. We can go ahead and get our fuse in the fuse holder, cap this up, and then I'm just going to clean up some of my wires with zip ties in here, and then we'll head to the back and test to make sure that it's working. So to test our wiring, we are going to be using a 4-pole tester, and that's going to be nice because it keeps it specific to the vehicle. That way, if you have any faulty wiring on your trailer, it's not going to give you a false negative. But if you don't have a 4-pole tester, the best way to do it is hooking up to the trailer that you're going to be using and run through the light sequence and check the lights on the trailer, or have someone take a look at those while you do that, and that way you know they're all working properly. Now the light sequence you're going to want to follow is going to be your running lights, your left turn signal, your right turn signal, and then finally your brakes. And that was a look and installation of the Curt Universal trailer wiring harness for a 4-pole on a 2023 Kia Telluride.